Sculpture. Sculpture comes from the Latin word sculpere, which means to carve. It was often used to represent any numbers of occurrences in people's lives from the very beginning. There are three-dimensional masks. The first one is the carving, second, casting, and the third is modeling or assembling materials. One of the most common purposes of sculpture is in some form of association with religion is the called images, a human-made object that is venerated for the spirit that represents. So there are some importance of these sculptures. Sculptures is like most forms of art. It's created with the idea of expressing a view. For instance, in the number one, the sculptures of what you see is that a great military figures, which is meant to inspire pride and patriotism in one's country. Number two is the sculpture of a great religion figures. Found in churches are meant to create a sense of spiritual awe. And number three is a sculpture of a great political leaders are meant to inspire people to achieve greatness. There are three types of sculpture. The first one is the bust, the second is the sculpture, and the architectural. The bust is a sculpted or cast representation of the upper part of a human figure, depicting a person's head and neck, as well as a variable portion of the chest and shoulders. The piece is normally supported by a plinth. These forms created the likeness of an individual. These may be of any medium used for sculptures such as marble, bronze, terracotta, or wood. A parallel term os is a representation of the upper part of an animal or a mythical creature. Statue is a sculpture representing one of or more people or animals, including abstract concepts allegorically represented as people or animals, normally full length as opposed to a bust, and at least close to life size or largely a small statue, usually small enough to pick up, is called a statuette or a figurine. And the last one is the architecture. It is both the process and the product of planning, designing, and constructing buildings and other physical structures. Architectural works in a material form of buildings are often perceived as cultural symbols and as works of art. Historical civilizations are often identified with their surviving architectural achievements. There are the medium techniques of sculpture. The first one is the carving, casting, modeling, and assembling. So let's start with the carving. On the carving, there are stone carving. It is an ancient activity where pieces of rough, naturally stone, are shaped by the controlled removal of stone. The second one is the word wood carving is a form of working wood by means of cutting tool, knife in one hand or a chisel by two hands or with one hand on a chisel and one hand on a mallet, resulting in a wooden figure or figurine. Casting. It is a glass casting. It is the process in which glass objects are cast by directly molding glass into a mold where it solidifies. This technique has been used since the Egyptian period. Modern cast glass is formed by a variety of processes such as kiln casting or casting into sand, graphite, or metal molds. Sleeve casting. There are many forming techniques to make ceramics, but one example is sleeve casting. This where sleeve liquid clay is poured into a plaster mold. Modeling. Unlike carving, correction are possible during modeling. The result, fired clay or preserved wax, is not as permanent as a stone or wood carving. Mold work, however, may be reproduced in stone by pointing, transferring the portion of the model to the block of stone by mechanical means, or in metal by casting. Assembling and construction. A constructed or assembled sculpture is made by joining perform pieces of material. It differs radically in principle from carved and modeled sculpture, both of which are fabricated out of a homogeneous mass of material. The basic sculpture terms. There are the basic sculpture terms. The armature. It is a support upon which a clay or other material may be used in building or fashioning an image. That's the example. Assemblage. It is a three-dimensional assembly of various materials to make an image. A piece of art made by combining a collection of a three-dimensional object into a whole. That's it. Base. It is a portion of the work in which the sculpture rests. Craftsmanship. It is a skill with which one uses tools and material. Plaster of Paris. A fine white powder which set hard when mixed in water. Relief. A form of sculpture in which the image projects in from a background. Freestanding. A sculpture intended to be viewed all side. Manipulation. A process to shape it by skilled use of the hands modeling. Mobile. A three-dimensional moving sculpture that hangs from the ceiling. Modeling. A sculpture technique intended to shape a pliable material like clay. Casting. A sculpture technique in which liquid materials are shaped by pouring into a mold. To copy a solid object by pouring a liquid, such as melted metal, clay, wax, or plaster, into a mold and letting it harder. Mold. A negative hollow form that is filled with a material such as plaster or metal removed when the material hardens into the shape of the mold. Chisel. A sculpture tool used in the subtractive process. Chisels are used by sculptors for carving stone, wood, and other materials. Replica. An exact or reproduction of an artwork, sometimes made on a smaller scale than the original. Statue. A carved, molded, or sculptured three-dimensional figure, especially of the person or animal, that stands up by itself. Clay sculpture. Clay is highly versatile, extremely easy to work with, and the ideal modeling material for the beginner as well as the seasoned sculpture. Soap sculptures. Sculptures in Sand project. And that would be all. Thank you.